Well, as you all are taking your seats, hello, everyone, and good evening. My name is Jada Jackson, and my pronouns are they, them, theirs. And I currently serve as the Community Engagement Manager for Northeastern University here in Charlotte. Many of you may be making the connection right now that I sent you an invite, or maybe we have spoken virtually. And so I just want to say hello and greet you in person. And thank you so much for joining us. And thank you as well for those that are joining us virtually. This event is special to me, and I had the opportunity to join a phenomenal planning team to create this event. And wow, look at the turnout. So, amongst those, Ray, where are you? Please give Ray a hand of applause. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge a very special EDD student who was unable to be here this evening, but took a huge part in the motivation behind this event. Please also give a round of applause for doctoral candidate Eugene Burns. As I prepare to welcome the Charlotte Campus Dean, Angela Hosking, to the stage, I want to take a brief moment to share why this event is important to me. I recently watched a documentary by Shonda Rhimes on the first Black Barbie. I highly recommend you watch it if you haven't had the opportunity to. But in this documentary, there is a line that really struck me, and I had to pause the TV, and I immediately began to think of this evening. Shonda said, if you don't see yourself in what is presented to you all the time, that is being good, being what is pretty, what is smart, what is usual, and you never see any representations of yourself, what does that mean you are? That statement is the reason that I do my work. That is why I stand before you on this stage this evening, and the reason we should all continue creating moments just like this, because we are opening up doors for those that want to be able to step in our footsteps, want to be able to make a pathway to move forward. And so as we prepare this evening of celebration, networking, and fellowship, ensure you introduce yourself to someone, shake a hand, give a hug, take a photo, tag us, um, and let us celebrate and continue this wonderful evening together. So please put your hands together one last time for the Charlotte Campus Dean, Angela Hosking.
Good evening. I'm pleased to extend a warm welcome to you this evening. My name is Angela Hosking, and I'm the CEO and Regional Dean of Northeastern University, Charlotte. Tonight's event, celebrating Juneteenth, Empowerment Through Black Leadership, is representative of our commitment to honoring and recognizing the invaluable contributions of African American leaders within our community and beyond. In 2020, Black people were representative of approximately 33% of Charlotte residents, 22% of Boston, 22% of Oakland, and 23% in New York City. Just four locations, I should say, of our Northeastern University Global Network, which exemplify the importance of celebrating diversity and leadership excellence at our university and in the communities we serve. Your presence at this event is a testament to our shared dedication to fostering an inclusive environment where every voice is valued, and we are grateful for your presence this evening. As a former nursing leader at Atrium Health and now the strategic leader for the Charlotte campus, I am proud to contribute to the work to build a diversified workforce pipeline that is reflective of our patient population served within our community, educated through our Center for Health Sciences, and dedicated to the access of quality health care, not only for African Americans, but for all in the Charlotte area. I would now like to introduce Dr. Corliss B. Thompson, a fellow Charlottean, that's what we call ourselves, and Associate Dean and Professor of the College of Professional Studies, Graduate School of Education. Dr. Corliss Thompson.
Thank you, Dean Hosking, for that warm welcome and really for hosting the panel and bringing us all together. I think Blue said, okay, church, that is where I come from, and that's kind of my mode of operating. So we are here to celebrate. We are here because we're proud. We're excited to have a conversation that we feel like is long overdue, and we're really happy to have it in the campus. So special thank you to all of the faculty and staff in the Charlotte campus for really pulling all of this together, everything that's happened behind the scenes, and everyone that's showed up tonight. Already, I feel like I'm at home. I got lots of hugs. I know you'd be here. How's your mama? How's your daddy? And that's just how we come together. And I think that that's just so important for Charlotte. As we think about the diversity of the Black community and being able to show up as our full selves in whatever way that is something we celebrate here. And so I'm excited that we brought a panel and speakers together to really begin this conversation. So let me just tell you a little bit about why I am a proud leader, a proud Black leader, and wanting to have this conversation. So I went to high school in Charlotte and started my career here 20 years ago as a teacher in Chantilly, Billingsville, which if you're from Charlotte, you know where that is. And as a youngster, 20 years ago, I was 22, I saw all of the challenges of teaching. But I wanted to be a teacher because I believed in the power of learning. But we had an achievement gap issue, a so-called achievement gap issue. We didn't have enough resources. We had all of these challenges. And so I decided that the answer to all of this was to go and learn more. So I went to graduate school because I believed in the power of learning. And I wanted to learn more about how do we help support teachers in schools? How do we help support these kids that are brilliant and not getting what they need? And then I got more excited about learning more about education. So I went and I got a PhD so that I could research even more learning. And then I started solving problems and seeing things. And what I realized is it's not just about learning. Learning is everything. It's empowerment. But leadership sits right alongside learning because I can learn all that I want, but until we bring people into the power that we see, the vision that we see, we're not going to get anything done. And that's why I'm excited to have this conversation, because it's time for us to think about how do we take this to the next level? How do we use the learning that we have to empower ourselves and to empower our communities? And that's why I'm so proud to be a part of the leadership team in our EDD program, because we prepare doctoral scholars that not just learn like I was doing, but actually putting that theory into action and creating and making change every day. And our EDD students and alumni that are here are not just leaders in education, they're leaders in business, nonprofits, healthcare, really bringing scholarship to bear on their communities of practice and with the social justice lens. So given this spectrum that we have related to Black leadership, learning. We wanted to bring together a group of folks from a variety of perspectives to talk with us about this, to really think about how does each of us as a leader, no matter if you're at the beginning of your journey, the end of your journey, if you lead a family, if you lead yourself, we are all leaders in this room and we all have a responsibility to own that leadership and move it forward. And one of the ways that I've been able to do that at a predominantly white institution is by having a group of folks around me that keep pushing me no matter the circumstances and that help me to continue to see that vision in spite of some of those challenges. And some of those folks you'll hear from later tonight. And then you will also hear from next, Dr. Richard O'Brien, who leads the John D. O'Brien African American Institute at Northeastern. Dr. O'Brien is one of those leaders. He's one of those people that keeps you in the ring when you're frustrated with different challenges, when you got all of the different things going on. He has this knack for bringing the Black community together at Northeastern, whether you're a student, faculty, or staff, or the surrounding community in Boston, which is really important for the Boston space. He brings that together, and then he not only does that in Boston, but is beginning to do that across the global network. So we are really honored to have him with us here tonight to be able to begin this conversation. So I'm just going to give a brief introduction to Dr. O'Brien, tell you a little bit more about him, and then I will turn it over to him. So I mentioned that Dr. O'Brien was the director at the African American Institute at Northeastern, and I'll let him tell you a little bit more about the Institute, but he's also a professor in the School of Public Policy and also in the College of Professional Studies. He also teaches in the EDD program. He's the co-coordinator of the Black Faculty and Staff Association. He's been with Northeastern since 2003. His service includes being a member of the Board of Trustees for Roxbury Community College in Boston. He's also president of the John D. O'Brien Think Tank for Black Professionals in Higher Education, and many, many more things. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn the mic over to Dr. O'Brien. Will you join me in welcoming him?
Good evening, family. Thank you, Dr. Thompson. I was hoping you were not going to read my whole resume. Well, I bring you greetings from Boston. Let me say that again. I bring you greetings from 2024 NBA champions, Boston. I just had to say that. So I also would like to thank the regional dean and CEO, Dr. Angela Hosking. Thank you so much for the conversation today. You know, we were talking about the global network and what Charlotte represents in the big scheme of what Northeastern is trying to do. And when I got here, I got out of the car in the back and it was doing construction. And I'm looking at them saying, what did Northeastern do? Right? 'Cause I couldn't tell from where I was at. But then I got inside and I was just blown away at the beauty of this campus. And more importantly, the work that you all are doing here on the Charlotte campus. And so with your vision, Dean Hosking, and the work that all the folks are doing, I think Charlotte represents the best and the brightest of what Northeastern is trying to do around the globe. So let's give Dean Hosking and her team a round of applause for all that they're doing. And I have to give a big, humongous shout out to Jada. Yeah, she back there grinning. Yep. Thank you so much for your invitation. But more importantly, thank you for what you do, because I always recognize when things like this happen, they don't happen by accident, right? There's always somebody who just running around like crazy trying to make sure everything happens. That's Jada. And she made sure everything happened. So I want to thank also our distinguished panelists that we're going to get a chance to hear from. I'm really looking forward to the discussion and the exchange. But I just want to thank all of you all for joining us today. Those of you all who are here in person and those who are joining us online. As mentioned, I am Dr. Richard O'Brien and director of the John D. O'Brien African American Institute. And if it sounds awfully familiar that the names are the same, the John D. O'Brien African American Institute is named after my father. He was first Black vice president of student affairs at Northeastern University. And when he passed away in 92, they honored him by renaming the center after him. And I joined Northeastern, as was mentioned, in 2003. And in 2007, they asked me if I would take on a leadership role at the center, and I did, with the understanding that after 2 years, I could go back to being full-time faculty because I was on a tenure track. Well, that was more than 15 years ago. I fell in love with the work that I do with students, but the beauty is I still get to teach also. And so I love to be able to come to you all and share a few thoughts on this issue of leadership. I have a connection to Charlotte. And when Jada invited me, I immediately flashed back. It was about 20 years ago when I graduated from Howard University. And mind you, this feels like home to me because DC was a beautiful place, and still not sure why I went back to Boston, but we'll talk about that another time. But one of the things that is really connected me to Charlotte is I was recruited by IBM to the Raleigh-Durham area, and I came through Charlotte, and I got a chance to spend a little bit of time here. And I was like, wow, this is almost like DC. And I always kept it in the back of my mind. Now, mind you, I'm a fan of Cam Newton. That was before he became a Patriot. I was elated when he came to the New England Patriots, but Patriots didn't do right by him, but that's a whole nother conversation. But finally, I had the wonderful blessing when I was at MIT, where I got my doctorate degree, of being a teaching assistant for Harvey Gantt, the former mayor of Charlotte. He had just finished his term as mayor, and he came to MIT to teach. And probably because I was the only Black guy in the department. They said, why don't you be his TA? But it was a blessing because he probably wouldn't characterize our relationship as a mentor-mentee, but I was mentored by him in urban studies, which I ended up getting my doctorate degree in. But the thing that I gained from my relationship with him during that time was that he had an incredible vision for Charlotte. And I suspect that what you see happening with Charlotte now was probably from the work that him and his people were doing back then, more than 20 years ago. And so it's good to see that Charlotte is doing so well and that it's growing so fast. I know you probably aren't too happy about the price of rent, but you know, so it's an amen. But that's the challenge of growth. So, but anyway, so Juneteenth, as also known as Freedom Day and Emancipation Day, commemorates the emancipation of enslaved African Americans in the United States. Every year on the 19th of June, Northeastern University and the country pauses for a moment to recognize the historical significance of Juneteenth and the Emancipation Proclamation that our country embraced in recognizing and celebrating this holiday. This opportunity for celebrating freedom, culture, progress, awareness, reflection, learning, community, unity, and relevance plays a role in the continuing healing process of African Americans, the African diaspora, and humanity as a whole. We have a responsibility to continue progressing, preparing tomorrow's leaders, and keeping the spirit, efforts, and legacy of our ancestors moving forward. In May of 2021, Dr. Carl Reed, then the Senior Vice Provost and Chief Inclusion Officer, presented to Northeastern's senior leadership the recommendation that Northeastern recognize Juneteenth as a holiday. In June of 2020, Massachusetts Governor Baker signed a bill designating Juneteenth as an annual Massachusetts state holiday. The federal recognition of Juneteenth would not occur until June of 2021. Shortly after Dr. Reed's presentation and the campus celebration, Juneteenth became a fully recognized holiday at Northeastern University. I share that background because in 1968, after the killing of Dr. King, Northeastern's Black student leaders put forth 13 demands to Northeastern University's then President Asa Knowles. One of those demands was the establishment of a Center for Black Students and a Department of African American Studies. Today, the John D. O'Brien African American Institute and the African Studies program continue to promote, reinforce, and advance the Black presence and progress on Northeastern's campus. As I often share, if you told student leaders in 1968 that Northeastern and the country would embrace Juneteenth as a holiday, they probably would not have believed it. As we all know, there is still so much to do to reach some achievable restoration equity from the impacts of slavery. I mention this because we are experiencing a crisis in leadership today. This is not to suggest that there aren't any leaders out there, quite the contrary. There are plenty of leaders out there, and my experience, particularly with students, is that leaders must be identified, nurtured, cultivated, guided, inspired, and supported. It's important that we take this approach in preparing ourselves for the long game, as I like to call it, of preparing our succession of leaders. I teach at a graduate class in the College of Professional Studies entitled Developing Your Leadership Capabilities. There are many different recognized leadership styles and approaches, but I believe the ones that are most critical for growth, progress, and advancement are transformational leaders and situational leaders. I won't go into a lot of detail about these two particular leadership approaches, but it is important to know that transformational leaders leave people better than they find them. President Barack Obama is an example of a transformational leader. situational leaders operate under the premise of when a situation changes, you have to be prepared to change with the situation. Let me pause here for a moment because Northeastern went through, as the country did, a very challenging time during the George Floyd period. And what happened on Northeastern's campus was, of course, we had the demonstrations, but Black students were really concerned about being able to do something of substance. And so through the African American Institute, or the Institute as we like to call it, all of our student organizations came together and they began to strategize on what they could do to get the Northeastern administration to make some substantive changes at Northeastern. And what they did, which was creative, was they pulled out the 13 demands that the students prepared in 1968 and did an assessment of where we were based on what they demanded in 1968. And what they found was that most of those demands had not been met. And so the students organized themselves and we worked with them, we helped them, we supported them, we guided them. And they got a sit down with President Ayoun. And President Ayoun, to his credit, he listened. They had to sit down with the provost. He listened. They had to sit down with the chancellor. He listened. And what ended up happening was, and if you go and read the president's official statement that he made public, he had committed to wholesale changes from all levels of the institution and representation, changes to the admissions process to make sure that diversity was at the top of their list and their goals, changes in the financial requirements and the scholarship funding and making more investment to make opportunities available, developing stronger partnerships with the community and with businesses, and expectation that it would help to impact opportunities for Black students. But the thing that stood out to a lot of folks was his message that he wanted to fight against anti-Blackness. Now, other people saw that from other college campuses, and they asked the question, how did you get the president to say that? And what happened was the students organized themselves in a very dignified and professional way, reached out to the administration and got them to listen. Their original thought was to do what often happens, like you saw happen in recent months, where the protests just come and disrupt life on campus. And they asked me, they said, Doc, how can we do this differently? I said, put together a plan, present it to the president, and let's see if we can have a conversation with him. And that's how it came together. But it was about changing with the situation and being able to approach the leadership from that standpoint. All right, I know I'm not supposed to be too long because we got to get to it. So get back on course. Is that like in the Oscars or they play the music? Jada, Jada, is that a message? Wrap it up. No. So, but if we are going to foster and develop Black leadership in Charlotte, as well as at Northeastern in general, the surrounding community has to be a part of that process. And it's going to require and involve a multifaceted approach that includes educational support and opportunities, mentorship, community engagement, economic empowerment, policy and advocacy, and probably more important to this audience, partnerships and collaborations that the community can benefit from and make use of the kind of resources that Northeastern has to offer. So finally, in closing, one of my pet peeves is succession leadership planning in higher education. And all our organizations, it is crucial for ensuring continuity, stability, and the ongoing success of situations or institutions, our people, our community, and our country. I had the pleasure of meeting with the AKAs on our campus about 2 weeks ago because they celebrated their 50 years of being on Northeastern's campus. And one of the things that I had talked with them about was helping to prepare the new leadership for Northeastern. And being a graduate of Howard University, one of the things that I told them was I always recognized that AKAs were an organization that gets things done. And it's not an accident that the first woman vice president is an AKA. And she's not the first Black woman president, she's the first woman vice president. Did I slip and say president? Oops. So, but the reason why I raise that is because we have to look around and tap into those who we think would be good, viable leaders for the work that we do. Too often, leaders move on and leave a void or leave a scramble to try and find somebody to fill that void. And so 3 important points I will leave you with, and then I'll take my place for the remainder of the program as part of the panel. First, identify and develop internal talent. Look around. There is leadership talent among us. And take approach in identifying them and help them to see their potential and nurture their development. A lot of young people want to make a difference. They just don't know how. And it's important for us to extend ourselves to them to make sure that they know they got somebody there to help them and support them in trying to become the leaders we know they can be. Second, create a transparent and inclusive succession plan. Be careful with this particular one because you don't want to be too transparent. But to be clear, with our young leaders, what you vision is for them, the role you hope that they will play, and when you move on, that they can take your place. If you take a look at, everybody's familiar with Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, right? Hakeem Jeffries, I remember it was probably about a good 5 or 6 years ago. He was in Boston for something. And as he was talking, I just picked up that somebody's preparing him for leadership. And if you saw that transition for the Democratic Party from Nancy Pelosi to Hakeem Jeffries, that wasn't an accident, and it certainly didn't happen overnight. They were preparing him for that role and that leadership that he's taking on right now. And all indications are they prepared him well. But you have to start, as I mentioned, the long game is to start early, right? Don't wait till the month you decide that you're going to leave and try to find somebody to take your place. Start preparing them now, or start preparing them a year in advance or 2 years in advance, or however long you think it's going to take. But the important thing is to start preparing young leaders. And third, ensure continuity and institutional knowledge. As I mentioned, too often organizations, programs, and initiatives fade because the leader leaves and the knowledge and wisdom go with them. Document your work. Make sure it's clear and easy for those coming behind you to understand and put into practice. Students and people in general, this is a saying that I share with my students all the time. Students and people in general don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. You got to let people know you care. I think this relationship that Northeastern has with the Charlotte community is happening because you all have showed Charlotte that you care about the Charlotte community, that you care about the people that are here, and that you're making these educational opportunities available to them. How much preparing tomorrow's leadership is not easy. But with diligence and commitment, like anything, it can be done. And as James Baldwin said, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. Hopefully, what we are doing today is inspiring to others and to those who are going to be our future leaders. Thank you, and God bless you all.
All right, now I get the pleasure of welcoming up the panelists. I'm going to do that, and then I think we're going to transition over and get the mics and everything set up. All right, so I'm not going to do bios because people are going to be able to tell you about themselves. I'll just introduce by name. Panelists, you can come on up when I introduce you and take a seat. We will start with Dewey Norwood Jr., Senior Lead Diversity and Inclusion Consultant, Enterprise HBCU Strategy, External Engagement, Diverse Segment, Representation and Inclusion at Wells Fargo and Company. Please join me in welcoming Dewey. We have Karen Burkhead, the Coordinator of Nursing Services, Flow and Capacity at Atrium Health, and Corresponding Secretary for the Charlotte Chapter of the National Black Nurses Association. We have Sherry Harley, Northeastern EDD alumna and educational consultant. We have Nia Johnson, Assistant Program Director, Clinical Professor at Northeastern University. William McNeely, CEO of Do Greater Incorporated, the Creative Labs, Entrepreneurship, Creativity, Innovation, Social Impact Entrepreneur, and the Gritty Creator Podcast. And last but not least, we have Ricky Singh, the Executive Director of My Brother's Keeper, Charlotte Mecklenburg, Special Projects at Charlotte Lab School, Director of Academics, and Community Engagement of One-on-One Prep Academy. All right, so we are going to get the conversation started. Excellent. So we got a lot to talk about. So Dr. O'Brien, thank you. We've heard from you, but we wanted you to be part of the panel so you could provide commentary as well, but I'm going to skip you for some questions. All right. So I've asked the panelists to talk tonight about the work that they are doing as Black leaders, and everyone represented on this stage has a different set of experiences that I think are really going to help us think holistically about what we can do and what we need to be thinking about as individuals, as organizations, and communities as Black leaders. So I've asked for each panelist to tell us a little bit about their background, just so you have a sense of kind of who they are, where they're coming from, what they're working on, and the perspectives that they're bringing tonight. And we're just going to go right down the line and start with you, Dewey.
Wonderful. Well, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay? All right. Wonderful, wonderful. Well, my name is Dewey Norwood, native New Yorker, but now have been in Charlotte for over 30 years. Very fortunate to attend the University of North Carolina at Charlotte and then transitioned into 49er. Come on now. Charlotte strong. Come on, 49ers. I hear you. But then transitioned to the banking industry. So I've now been in the banking industry for 26 years. And in my current role, I'm responsible for our firm-wide HBCU strategy. So the work that we're doing to support the students, the alumni, the communities, and the administrators at HBCUs across the nation. So that's a little bit about me in a nutshell. I'm really excited to be a part of tonight's discussion.
Excellent. Welcome. Karen.
Hello, my name is Karen Burkhead, and I'm originally from Baltimore, Maryland. And I'm an alumni from the other HU, Hampton University. I have been a nurse 35 years. I was counting today and realized 35. So I've been a nurse 35 years. And I have been in Charlotte 29 years at this time. So I will represent healthcare. I'm currently the coordinator of nursing services for capacity flow at Caroline's Medical Center. A lot of people do not realize that Mecklenburg County and a lot of surrounding counties have really outgrown all the hospitals in the area. So for almost every day, we are at capacity from 100 to 108% almost every day. So what do? We're the region's level 1 hospital for trauma. So we do not turn away trauma. So for full at 108%, how do we take care of these patients? So I manage or try to manage, or I say strategic chess every day of getting patients out so we can get these patients in. So I will talk in the perspective of Black leadership in healthcare. Also, a lot of people did not realize that Charlotte never had a chapter of the National Black Nurses Association in this area. There is a Piedmont chapter, but there has never been a chapter in Charlotte. So 3 years ago, several nurses got together and said, we should start a chapter. There's opportunity for us to be out in the community, to represent ourselves as nursing, healthcare, also teach education, healthcare to the community, and support the community as best we can. And so that's my perspective for this panel.
Hi, my name is Nia Johnson. I'm originally from South Carolina. I am the Assistant Program Director for the MS-SLP program here at Northeastern University. We are the only speech program in Charlotte, North Carolina, which I am super excited about. My first cohort starts in September. I've built a great team here. Definitely passionate about bringing diversity to the field of speech-language pathology. I don't know if you know, there's only 8% of SLPs that identify of color. So I definitely know that we will also be providing services to the community of Charlotte. We will have a free clinic on campus. So definitely want to make sure that we are providing culturally responsive services. So we want to prepare those clinicians, but also we want the community to be served by clinicians who look like them. So that's my goal.
Good afternoon. I guess I should say good evening, everybody. My name is William McNeely, native Charlottean as well. A product of busing in Charlotte. So I grew up in Charlotte back in the 70s. And now I spent most of my career as a technologist, mostly with Apple in educational technology and integration. And I'm the founder and CEO of Do Greater Charlotte. And we are a small nonprofit here in Charlotte, really focused around developing the communities in Charlotte, particularly under-resourced communities, and providing access and exposure to technology, creative technologies, entrepreneurship training for underserved and under-resourced communities. So we've built an 8,000 square foot innovation lab on the west side of Charlotte that houses over 500 to 600 kids a year, training in entrepreneurship, small bit, for them to be the next generation of entrepreneurs. And so our focus is always to build those facilities all around Charlotte, and to provide that type of access in under-resourced communities for our communities to start that path to upward mobility. So I'll be talking about community development, community engagement, and making sure that we're taking care of our under-resourced communities around education and access.
Good evening. My name is Ricky Singh. I am coming up on year 19 as an educational leader in Charlotte. I've been here since 2011, originally from Brooklyn, New York. Currently, I'm the executive director of My Brother's Keeper Charlotte Mecklenburg, an organization that focuses on empowering Charlotte youth with innovative and positive experiences. But we specifically try to uplift our boys and young men of color 12 to 24 in Mecklenburg County. So excited to be here tonight.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sherry Harley. I am a Massachusetts native. I've lived in Charlotte since 2010. I'm a recent alum of Northeastern. I just got my doctorate in December. And my work focuses on the experience, well, my research focused on the experiences of Black girls at a predominantly white independent school. I'm the founder of Filori Consulting Services, which is an organization that works with educational institutions to build structures to support belonging for all of their stakeholders. And I'm really excited to talk about my work and the work that is happening across Charlotte for young women and girls of color. Thanks.
Awesome. So in the EDD program, one of the things that we always start with is the problem of practice. And I thought it would be a good space to start this conversation with what's the problem? What's the challenge that you see in front of you as you're thinking about the Black community in Charlotte that you're looking to solve for? The things are at the top of your mind as you kind of look at what's in front of us and what's ahead that we need to think about. And do I have a volunteer that wants to jump in first?
I can start. So I think that one of the issues that I see is the deliberate, and I think it's sort of ironic that while we're talking about Juneteenth, which has, been recently been made into a federal holiday, we're also simultaneously dealing with the backlash against DEI work. And coming out of the summer of 2020, the pandemic, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, this passion that we saw across the country, not just for Black people, but for Americans in general, to really right some of the historical wrongs that we've seen. I'm a history teacher, and so that's the lens that I bring to everything. So at some point, I'm going to dive into a history lesson. Please, somebody just give me the high sign and I'll stop. Excuse me, but I say that to say that for me, that is the problem that we're facing as a community, that we are celebrating Juneteenth, but we are in the middle of a deliberate attempt to erode the gains of the civil rights movement.
And do you want to talk a little bit about your work and how you see kind of the work that you do? What is the work that you do and how do you really move that forward given the problems that you've set up? And panelists, the questions are the same. I just might be going a little bit out of order. So bear with me.
So we asked me again for this, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so you just set up the problem for us. What do you do? What do we do as leaders? How do we address that problem? How do we address that challenge? What do you specifically do to address those challenges?
So for me, the first part of addressing the challenge is realizing that this is systemic and that there is no amount of, we can't be, there's a word for it that I'm blanking on. It's when you are, help me somebody, it's when you like dress up the problem. Respectability, that's what it is. Respectability. I'm sorry, I was losing my train of thought, but you can't respectability your way into being accepted by somebody, right? And so when we show up and we are vocal about what is wrong and what we see as problems, we have to be heard. We have to demand to be heard. There's a great Zora Neale Hurston quote about if you're silent about your pain, they'll kill you and say you enjoyed it. And so for me, like, it's, yes, we celebrate Juneteenth. Thank you. We want this. We want to acknowledge this, but we also want all the rights that we have fought for, that we have been fighting for. When, you look at the history of the United States, we see that when things improve for people at the lowest part of society, they improve for everyone, right? And so the work that we do as Black Americans for Charlotte, through Northeastern, across the country, that helps level for everybody.
Thank you. Ricky, what are you thinking about as you look out and see those problems, see the work that you do, the challenges in front of us?
Yeah, and I think to echo our sentiments, I think the work we do is so ingrained with youth, as well as helping to support other organizations that are serving youth. I think in our county specifically, we're seeing that there's a continued access issue with services. And I want to maybe move away from services, right? But like, there's like bare minimum services, and then there's like innovative and positive experiences. So like there's access to services, and then maybe those services come, but maybe the innovative and positive experiences aren't there, right? I remember being a youth in Brooklyn, and yeah, I used to eat from the free lunch truck in the summer. Yeah, it was food, but was it the best food I can get in the summer? No. So I'm thinking about how do we take things to the next level for our youth beyond just, okay, you guys have a roof over your head, food, shelter, and you go to school. But like, what does it take to get to the next level? And I think about, this could be a good segue, about the work of William McNeely, Do Greater, and so many other organizations in our city and county that are trying to push up to the next level, a little bit further than just the bare minimum of services.
Absolutely. Yep. William, would you like to share your perspective, especially as we're thinking about youth? And then I think after we talk about youth, let's jump to higher ed and then business and the workforce.
Yeah, absolutely. We do a lot of work with Ricky. And one of the things that we see, I grew up on the west side of Charlotte, and 30 or some odd years ago, we had these challenges around access and exposure and the types of things that we could see in our communities around what we could do and become. We didn't see a lot of the things that, some of the professions and careers that you guys might have now. We didn't see that in our community. And so one of the things that we started to understand was this, doing urban renewal, there was this lack of opportunity and resources that were being placed in these areas. And so the access wasn't there. I had a chance to be bused to the south side of Charlotte and started to see things that I would not normally see on my side. And so for us as an organization, as we started about 5 years ago, we started to say, well, why is it not that we can't provide these same type of opportunities for our youth in the communities hyper locally where they live? Can we provide these spaces and technologies and relationships and social capital inside the neighborhood, as opposed to having our kids travel all across the city to be able to do those things? So as an organization, we said, okay, if that's the case, then how can we create this sense of belonging inside the community, designed the same way that you would be in a space like this, and allow the community to come into our environment to start to build these economic connections that are needed for our kids to move upwardly in an upward mobility fashion. So that's what we saw as a challenge on the west side specifically, and how our organization went about trying to provide tools and technology and spaces in a nurturing community to be able to start our kids on that path toward upward mobility. And that's, working with, organizations like Ricky's and corporate sponsors and partners, we're able to do those things.
Excellent. Already I'm just hearing this theme around like context specific. If you're from Charlotte and you know these different areas and neighborhoods, you know that you can't lead in South Park the way that you do on Beatty's Fort Road. And as leaders, we just have to know context. We have to know people to put them on that pathway, to bring those resources. And to your point, Sherry, you can't just respectability your way into this. You have to be able to know the people and get things done. So in terms of knowing the people, being able to get things done, Nia, do you want to talk about your work, how you see the problem and kind of how your work helps supports this problem that's in front of us?
Well, one of the problems that I've seen since I've only been in Charlotte, working in Charlotte a couple of months, but I started here last year, and knowing that we were going to have a on-campus speech clinic that was going to be free, I immediately thought about the services that we could provide to the public, because health disparities, definitely at lack of access to health care, but that includes speech language services as well. So you have clients who have had a stroke or have Parkinson's disease and ran out of visits and can no longer be served, or you have that child who no longer getting services from schools, or private practices have long waiting lists. So definitely thinking what we can offer the community here. So that was my goal of making sure that we can provide access, working with organizations like My Brother's Keeper. He has put us in places where we were able to go out and talk to their families and clients about the services that we can provide. And we want to make it accessible to them. So we'll have free parking when clients come for services. We'll have teletherapy with services. If they have a phone or they have a computer, we'll be able to provide services as well, but also going into those spaces. We plan on taking students out to these spaces to serve these clients as well. So I think just making sure that we're able to provide access to the community is something that was very important. And we're doing that here at Northeastern.
Absolutely. Karen, can you talk a little bit about the problem from your perspective, and what does your work like in addressing that problem?
Before I talk about mine, I did want to address something about access. There is a physician, I wish I could think of her names, Black physician, who talks about access in the lower income Black communities. And so when you think about it, one of the things she mentioned was, where are the Harris Teeters in these communities? The Publix. Maybe there may be a food line, but a lot of times there may not even be a food line. So, access and having to catch the bus to go however far just to go to the grocery store, or you're going to the local grocery store, but the prices are a lot higher. So when you think about that, how Charlotte's growing, oh, Charlotte's a great city, it's growing, but where is Charlotte growing? So you have to think about that also, and that does affect healthcare because when you're looking at nutrition and schools and when school's out, and then you have patients who come into the hospital with health issues, and a lot of it's because they don't have access. So from our perspective, I could say there's still inequity in healthcare. Um, there's a difference, and I hate to say it. Even my mother talked about this article that she sent to me, and it was very upsetting about how differently patients are treated compared from a senior or Black male or female compared to a white male or female. You know, the healthcare is not the same. You know, as a Black nurse, we make sure we take care of everybody. But sometimes if there's a white nurse taking care of a Black senior, they don't get the same health care. They're not getting as good care as if it was someone that looked like their grandmother. So access does play an important part in healthcare, as far as just ability to go to the pharmacy, the ability to get your blood pressure medication, your diabetes medication. The thing that I've seen in healthcare for me, being a nurse so long, it used to be people who were on dialysis were in their 70s, their 80s, kidney failure. Now you have African American men and women, because they're not able to manage their high blood pressure, because they're not able to manage diabetes. You have people in their 30s in dialysis who are losing their kidneys because they don't have the resources to take care and manage their health conditions, or have the knowledge to know the importance of managing the health condition. So what happens when you don't control your diabetes or your high blood pressure? You know, organs start failing. You don't have the circulation. And next thing you know, you're 30 years old on a kidney transplant list. So those are the things that I've seen in my years, where it's gone from seniors because of age to now people in younger years having these major health conditions.
I mean, it's not, when I think about leadership, it's not just that we're standing up here and sharing, but we're talking about people's lives and their well-being. And so that's why the work is important. Dewey?
Fascinating, panelists, everything you guys have mentioned so far. So with my Wells Fargo hat on and the banker hat on a little bit, we'll talk about some of the economic components of things. So prior to my work supporting the HBCU space, I was responsible for our higher education programs across the institution. So the scholarships we were providing for students to go to college. Everybody has seen the metrics. Students that complete a college experience are going to earn over the course of their lifetimes $1 million more than individuals that maybe don't have that college experience. So for me, I think there are really a lot of areas of focus around economic empowerment. Just a quick survey here, and I brought some notes to kind of help me with this. I'd be interested in how many folks are fans of McKinsey & Company. A lot of folks maybe sign up for their e-blasts and stuff. Great, okay, seeing some hands go up. So they have a great area of focus that connects into the Black economic futures. And if you have not researched any of this, I would encourage you to do so. And I'm just going to read just an excerpt here, and I quote, this is from February of this year. Black consumers' collective economic power is set to expand dramatically from about $910 billion in consumption in 2019 to $1.7 trillion by 2030. So you guys can do the math there. That's doubling, right? There's another way to say that. We're moving on up to the east side, to a deluxe apartment.
Guy.
We're moving on up to the east side. We finally got a piece of the pie. Now, $1.7 trillion in pie. What does that mean? I think everybody would want a slice of that in some way, shape, or form, right? So for corporations, for organizations, I think we're finding ways to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the African American community. At least I think that's what we're doing from a Wells Fargo perspective. So that's just data that we can use on those sides. I think for us, it's also about education. And again, we, through our firm, deliver a lot of great programs. One of my favorite ones is our Beyond College webinar series, where we're talking with students, we're talking with community members about building credit, how to save to own a home, how to put aside dollars to be able to open up a small business. So we hope that we're sowing those right kinds of things there from a community perspective, and we hope that folks can kind of grow and develop. So just a little bit from my perspective on the economic side, some things we're working to address.
Thank you. As I mentioned, I was a teacher, and for me, it was all about learning. But then I realized as I became a leader that it's about the money. And it's about the business side of it. And I think that that's one of the challenges, especially from the education side of things. If you don't understand the economics of it and the ways to connect into that,
Yeah.
what do you do? Um,
Well, I hope that you can feel confident enough to say, hey, listen, there's some things that I don't know. I think we all have to work to identify those pieces, and then we can go to or find trusted leaders that can help us answer the tough questions that we're thinking about economically. Not easy to do that. I mean, raise your hand if you like to if you like to tell people you don't know something. No, I don't think anybody really likes to do that. Some people do. But from an economic perspective, we have to be able to have those conversations and then go to trusted partners that can help us get the answers to the tough questions. The same way we would with a physician or with an education partner or someone in other kinds of areas. I think you need to be able to do those same things financially.
Absolutely. Leadership lesson number one. You don't have to be an expert in anything and everything. Just know your area and know when to reach out for help. So I want to make sure that we get to the points that our panelists really want to share. So we're going to go to Dr. Richard to see if you, hearing all of this, if you have any reflections. And then for the panelists, if you can be thinking about what is that leadership lesson? What are those points that you want to share? I know we had a couple of different questions. So whatever that thing is that you feel like you really want to convey to the audience, you can feel free to do that on the next round.
Yeah, all that everybody has said is obviously very important. And we have to take this conversation in the context of the environment we're currently in. And I think the challenge that a lot of us have, and I'm sure all of you all can attest to this, is that the generation that's coming behind us, they are having a really difficult time. They don't know what to believe. They don't know what to trust. They've given up to some extent on school, or if they haven't given up on school, they don't think that it's really going to benefit them in the long term. And we just have to find a way to help our young people believe again and to hope again and to aspire again. And that's obviously not all of them, but it's enough of them where you notice that some of our young people are giving up. And it's understandable because some of us as adults are giving up, right? Or if we're not giving up, we are so frustrated, right? And we are so angry that we've gotten to this point as a society that it makes it really hard to believe that things are going to get better. But we have to believe that they're going to get better. And I think education and economics go hand in hand in this environment. My youngest son, he wants to learn about how money works, right? And my first question to him was, where'd you come up with that from? Like, well, Daddy, I ain't got no money. I don't have a job. I need to figure out how this works. But there's nothing wrong with getting an education on how money works, right? Get an education on how to make things happen. And as I tell students all the time, get an education in something, but always make sure that you can leverage what you learn to do whatever it is that you want. And I think it's really incumbent upon us to try and encourage young people to go to school, right? They're finishing high school. For the first time, I'm hearing kids saying finishing high school is all they want to do. When we were taught that going to college is the natural next step, convincing them to at least try college or at least try community college or at least try some educational program or learn a trade, right? I tell to young people all the time, when's the last time y'all tried to hire an electrician? Oh my gosh, it is incredibly hard to find a good qualified electrician or a plumber or a carpenter because people aren't going into the trades anymore. Last thing, the young man came to put in my water heater right? And I started asking him about school, and he's like, "What do you mean, school, man? Everybody's calling me to put in heaters. I'm making money right now. Shoot." But the important thing is to try and not let our young people give up. And the way we do that is we can't give up, right? And I always say that we've been through worse, we've survived worse, and we're gonna get through this. But it's gonna be tough.
So as the panelists are preparing their last kind of comments to you, we are going to come to the audience for questions. So definitely be thinking about your questions as we do this last round. Who wants to jump in? Go ahead.
Keep
Dewey.
it super short. Just be willing to pay it forward. And one of our other panelists mentioned that a moment ago. You're a subject matter expert in something. Someone somewhere needs what you have. Hashtag find a way to pay it forward. If you do that, we're going to build better communities here in Charlotte, through the state, through the Southeast, through the U.S. That's simple.
In one of my first roles as a leader, I worked at a smaller hospital. It's now Atrium System, but back then it was Carolina's healthcare system. And one of the things I discovered and did not realize when I had this position is that I was the only Black manager in that entire hospital. And I did not even know it until all the environmental service workers who were Black came to congratulate me because they knew it. And it was significant to them to see someone who looked like them in the hospital. So my perspective is you never know who's watching you. And so we have to always make sure we represent ourselves well, not just for people of color, but for everybody, but especially people of color, because it's not just for nurses. It could be environmental, it could be dietary. They need to know that they can be leaders. And in order to know they can be leaders, they have to see someone like us who is a leader to know that that thing they're reaching for is there and it's available. So always try your best to represent yourself well. It can be hard because sometimes you're in areas where you may be the only Black person. And there are people in the background that you do not realize are actually watching you. There are people that you could be mentoring just by your actions and the way you show yourself on your day-to-day duties. And it's amazing to me, even now in the hospital, so many people may know my name and I have no idea who they are, but they do know who I am. And that's because these are people who are watching and seeing what I'm doing. And then they'll come up to you and say, hey, I've always liked the way you blah, blah, blah. So that's one of the things I would say from my perspective is that you should always make sure you're representing yourself well. If someone asks you a question, and wants that advice, offer that assistance, offer that advice, offer that, that giving hand, to help them out so they can improve. If you see something, maybe they're just not doing quite right, you can take them to the side and say, hey, you could maybe handle this situation a little better, because I know you want to be the next manager in your department. So from my perspective, that's one of the things as a leader that I really discovered is that always remember someone is watching you.
I think for me in the field of speech language pathology, the biggest way that I have been giving back has been mentorship. I'm always mentoring students. And I know a lot of people start at the high school level. I start at the elementary school level, just going in, telling them what I do, middle school, high schoolers, and just tell them about our profession. Because a lot of people have never heard of a speech language pathologist. The first thing that, do you help people talk? Yes, but I do a lot more. I help people who have a stroke, someone who has Parkinson's disease. I could do corporate speech pathology. I can help this person be a better communicator. There's so many other things that we can do. So I'm always mentoring students, always reaching out. I love to go talk to churches and just tell them about our profession. But also since I've been here, just been telling them about Northeastern, about the program that we have. We're the only program in Charlotte. That's the way we can grow the field here. There is a shortage of SLPs in all settings and all areas. So the way we can do that, we started a grad program here. We're taking students. We have a clinic that's taking in clients for free. So definitely mentoring. I've had so many students that want to come on the campus. Yes, come by my campus, please see it. Let's talk. I want you to meet my faculty. Like I have definitely helped grow the diversity in the CSD department because just on the Charlotte campus alone, just it's 8% of SLPs of color. I have 5 working for me in my department. So that's major for Northeastern University. Just to see, that's what I saw when I stepped on campus. I saw leadership. I saw so much diversity in leadership. So definitely that is my goal. I'm just very passionate about my profession, very passionate about growing the diversity in my profession. I feel like I can do that here in Charlotte.
You know, at Do Greater Charlotte, we are an organization that really is probably defined as an organization that focuses on upward mobility. And really one of the things that's important for us is to kind of look at what that looks like and what it means in the context of, you know, Charlotte being this area of a lack of upward mobility. Studies show, particularly one out of Boston, that talks about Charlotte being lacking in that area, 50 out of 50. Maybe we're a little better now. That was several years ago. But for us, it's you know, how do we create these spaces that facilitate that upward mobility? We call it this creative collisions. We call it the intentional opportunity for us to connect young adults, youth and young adults with professionals who can start that path. So the question that we always ask is, where does up start? What does it start for you? What did it start for you? How did it start? And can we intentionally create those opportunities for up to start for other people? So when we start designing these spaces, we start thinking about how to create those things. And so what I would leave you with is, who are you working with where they can say up started with you? They said 20 years from now, they will say, I remember that time that I met that person, and that's where my upward mobility trajectory started. And that's how we look at it. And so I encourage everybody from early elementary all the way up to provide those type of opportunities. Why don't we have a lot of students sitting here today? Because those cross-class connections could be happening right now. And these are the things that the researchers say that need to happen, right? Probably, you know, me growing up on the west side of Charlotte, I can point to the fact where I got bused to South Mecklenburg and can tell you the exact person that spoke into me and said, you got something. You know, so why is that not happening now? Why don't see those students here where they start pushing up against the Rickies of the world and say, this is where it started? So that's what I think, in my mind, we need to really start to concentrate on.
Was a great answer. I'll be brief. Collaboration over competition. I'll just like drop that there and then you go with it. And then the next part is like, you can't do community work and not be in the community. I just want to point that out. And I want to give a great example. Today, you know, I know we're sitting here and this is a great facility, but literally a 4-minute drive sits the Brook Hill community in Southside Homes. And today, not Jada, maybe 5 hours ago, we were able to host one of the executives from Enlivian to come in and see what could be possible of when we collaborate and don't compete. What does it look like to collaborate in all different areas? Or as what we'll say, like these creative collisions, like what does it look like to bring others in spaces and go to their space? So I would say, I would leave you with, don't be afraid to have a meeting and not have a purpose, and meet someone just to meet them. And like, I just want to get to know you, and I don't know what we're doing. We may never do anything. I knew Will back in 2018. I think he was building Do Greater. I was working on a high school. It was COVID. I think we just now started to really move, but meet people because they're good people, and eventually things will come about, you know?
I have a couple of pieces. The first is, as a leader, you have to take care of yourself, right? I mean, you talk about pouring, can't pour out of an empty vessel. So the work is urgent, right? The work is important. The work is here, it's now, but we can't do it if we're tired. To that end, talking about, you know, to Ricky's point about collaboration, I think that, you know, when I first came to Charlotte, I didn't have any family here. I lived in Concord. I worked at a predominantly white school where I was one of very few faculty of color. And it was very hard for me to feel like I could go out into Charlotte and find community. And what I mean by that is, you know, finding things that I wanted to do. So I volunteered with Big Brothers Big Sisters. I served on the board of a charter school. I joined the Charlotte chapter of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women. So sometimes we do this work through our organizations, but sometimes we just have to say, how can I make a difference tomorrow? Who can I talk to tomorrow to reach out to? And so I just want to encourage you to find something that you're interested in, find an hour in a month that you can dedicate to that, and go for it, because you'll build the connections that you want to build.
Excellent. Can we give our panelists a round of applause? So I've been over here, we have such a diverse panel, so many different perspectives. And I was just over here trying to capture, like, what are the kind of leadership lessons? I got a list of 18 that I can share. But first, we want to hear from you. What questions do you have? What thoughts do you have that you'd want the panelists to respond to?
Hi, my name is Farah. I'm also from New York. And my question was more catered to what you were mentioning about young people giving up and just counteracting burnout, because I've noticed as well that a lot of us are dropping out because of stress, not feeling community, things like that. School is getting harder, and I would say that a college environment is usually pretty volatile instead of collaborative, like you were saying. So what are some ways to like counteract that?
All right, so I'm going to actually go down to that end first that can speak to the K-12, like what's actually happening to address the question, and then we'll come over here to the higher ed piece. So Ricky, Will, Sherry, any of you would be able to speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think that I can't imagine what it's like being a student today. So I'm not going to speak for what I think the solution will be, because I'm not sitting in the seat, but I can speak to being more self-aware and being open to understanding your own journey to personal wellness. I have found that has been important for our youth. So for adults, it's our role is to provide safe spaces so discussions and things like that can occur, where we can talk about collaborative solutions for wellness in schools. So I would say from an adult, that's what I think could help, is like more time to have conversations about what could change or shift, instead of just rolling out a program and over programming youth that may never come. All right.
So as I mentioned, my dissertation was about the experiences of Black girls at a predominantly white independent school. And there are 3 takeaways I had. And I think maybe 1 or 2 might be helpful. The first was that these girls, they created safe spaces for themselves. They found safe spaces in the school, like whether it was a physical space, like a teacher's classroom, or just, a group chat they had, like, I can't believe this person said to me today. They had trusted adults. Find the adult who is there to help you, right? Find the person that's going to be a mentor to you, that you can just go and you can unpack things that are happening. And then they kept their eyes on the prize, right? They knew that this was an experience that their parents had arranged for them, and that, there might be some difficult times, but they had a goal, and the goal was to get through and to move on to the next educational experience that they were looking for. So any of those, if they're helpful for you, like just to power through, right? And I hope that that's some comfort.
One of the things I think is it is important for spaces are important, and find that space that you could, that our youth and young adults can act as that third space that, all of us adults have that third space that we go to, whether it's a coffee shop or it's downtime or whatever it is. Everybody has something that can clear their heads. And so when we built the space, I wanted to include all this cool technology in it, but we brought 25 young adults in like you and asked them what they wanted. And it was mostly around safety and mental health and cool spaces and can I turn the lights off and meditate and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, nah, just get some cool technology. They was like, no. And so I think that's important that we listen and hear you and try to create spaces that do that. But at the same time, we do a ton of programs as well, but we bring in somebody like Ricky and my brother's keeper, who brings in mentors for us. So as our kids are learning, we all of a sudden stop learning and send them over to Ricky's mentors, and they start talking about mental health and these type of things. So I think it's a balance with we as are designing those spaces and programs have to listen to you.
One of the challenges we experience, and some of you all may be familiar with this at the higher education or college level, is if students get into Northeastern, they are incredibly bright, they are incredibly talented, but their social development is not in pace with their intellectual academic development. And so you could have a student that's fantastic in school, straight A's, but they get in a relationship, break up with whoever they break up with, and their life starts to fall apart, right? And so when they come to us, we say, well, first of all, you got to go to class. But second of all, you got to keep talking to these young folks, right? Take an interest in what is happening with somebody that could be right a part of your social circle, right? It could be a niece, it could be a nephew, it could be a friend of yours, child that may not want to talk to their parents, but realize that you're somebody they feel safe with. But the point is, we have to pay attention to our young people and make sure that they're okay, right? But also help them understand it's okay to not be okay, right? There's a whole lot of craziness going on in the world, and Lord knows we as adults ain't okay, right? So, but helping them process it and get through it. The way we can combat the giving up syndrome, if I could call it that, is they can't see us give up. Right? If they're feeling like that and then they see us looking like we're giving up, they'll never have a chance. And even if we feel like giving up, we can't let them feel like we're giving up, and try to be strong for them. But the last thing about higher education too is part of the reason why I joined the Roxbury Community College Board of Trustees is because when students get into Northeastern, they're not academically struggling. They, like I said, they just social stuff isn't stuff we got to worry about. But there are so many young people that need that opportunity to access education at a level that they can digest it, and a place where they can feel safe making mistakes. They can feel safe not knowing, feel safe not being the smartest kid in class, feel safe being able to ask questions that sometimes may seem like, why are you asking that question? And I feel like the work that I do at Northeastern is in one capacity, but Roxbury Community College at that level is just a totally different capacity and working with a totally different population that to some degree I feel like needs me more than the other areas of higher education. And so, and I don't want to not do the support work that we do at Northeastern, but I want to make sure that I also give back to the young people that are in most need, as much as I can.
Did I see one more question? Two more. Okay.
Hi, my name is Deborah Crawford, and I am the president of Black Nurses Rock Greater Charlotte.
Okay.
My question is kind of twofold. How do you get community buy-in? Because we can bring programs, we can bring things. I know we have to make sure it's what the community wants, but then, and we have to develop a trust with them, but how do we get them to buy in? Because sometimes they're so comfortable with what they know that they can be they don't want to get out of that comfort zone. So how do we get them to buy in to the changes that you want to see for them? I know they have to see it for themselves as well, but to get them out of their comfort zone sometimes can be a big challenge.
Dewey or Karen, did you want to speak to that?
I think for the healthcare side, sometimes it's really that they don't know what they don't know. And a lot of times when I used to work in the emergency department, you would have patients come in and there are resources available. They just didn't even know we're in their neighborhood. So you have to let them know that one, there are resources available. Two, economics is a big factor too. Can I afford it? So when you offer resources, you also need to offer resources that you know that they can afford. You know, that they won't go one time and say, oh, I can't afford this. I won't go. Find resources that are close to the neighborhood, because if they catch the bus, they're not going to catch the bus from one end of Charlotte to the other end of Charlotte. So we really need to educate on what's available, what the resources are, find out what it is they need to. And sometimes we don't listen. So sometimes listening to exactly what is it that they need, and seeing if we can find resources. And if we don't know the specific resource, then we could at least gear them towards the person that knows the resources there. So it's sometimes it's a matter of that. So from that perspective in healthcare, I do know a lot of times in the emergency department, we do give out a lot of information to help those in the community. But again, like I said, it's sometimes they just don't know what they don't know, that's available to them.
Who else wanted to add?
And I think, I mean, I'm speaking in terms of the community work that I've done. I think that if you're going out in the community, if you keep showing up, right? If you are consistent and your presence is there and it's just, we're here to serve, we're here to serve, we're here to answer your questions. If you keep showing up, you develop the trust that you're looking for. And then you can get people to see, how to change.
Okay, last question. Oh, I didn't realize we had so many. Okay, so we're going to take one more question because I got to stay on time, but we still have time. We still have space after we close out the formal session. So our panelists hopefully will stay around for a few minutes if you want to be able to engage them. So who gets the last question? Jada gets to decide.
I'm gonna let one of our students get the last question. if
Okay.
that's okay.
Thank you, Jada. My name is Lucia John, and I did go to Roxborough Community College to get my prerequisites. The question I have is what are some of the things faculty members can put in place to reach younger students to encourage them to want to become an aspiring nurse student? The healthcare community certainly needs more nurses and healthcare workers. So what can you all put in place for that?
Okay, so I'm going to go to Nia on that one since it's a faculty member question. And then Dewey, I wonder if you want to talk about your perspectives just in terms of the business community, HBCU work and faculty.
Healthcare to start, please.
Definitely, I think that I connect with students very well. When going out, that's the thing I love to do is recruitment and talking to students. But definitely when I was a faculty member, I was a clinic director once, and also being a chair, I had an open door policy. Students knew that they could always come to me and talk because you create safe spaces. And even in class, like, I'm up there, I'm teaching, and I'm looking at my students. I'm like, wait a minute, hold up, what's going on? Close your books. Hey, what's going on this week? How's class this week? How's life? Let's talk a little bit. Let's have a mental health day. Let's talk about current events today. We can talk about what's going to happen next week. Like sometimes you have to do that. Definitely being compassionate is one thing. Knowing you have to be compassionate, because I always tell my students when you don't come to class or you don't turn in assignments, and I know my students, and I'll send them an email, what's going on? Like you didn't come to class or you were very quiet in class today. You didn't turn in your assignment. If it's late, I don't care. Call me, let me know what's going on. We just want to know what's going on. We want you to learn the information. But definitely I tell my students, life be lifing. Things happen. I had a student, power went out, didn't come to class, didn't tell me anything, didn't turn an assignment. And I saw the 0 pop up and I was like, wait a minute, this student was very consistent in class. Definitely, let me reach out. And the student said, oh, I never had a professor to do that before. I'm like, what? And I think that's coming from an HBCU. Like my professors will call me, hey, what is going on with you today? Where have you been today? Oh, you turn this in? No, I'm not taking this. This is unacceptable. So definitely letting students know there are deadlines, there are guidelines. We want you to do your best work, but things happen. Let's talk. And so I definitely knowing your students, creating a safe space, definitely being open to your students, and sharing experiences. I love to share experiences from when I was a student, or things that happen in practice. Like I say, okay, this is in my syllabus. I have to teach you this, but guess what? I've never used this term in my profession of 24 years being a speech language pathologist. So students just connect to you. So be real, share your experiences with students, create safe spaces, be open, check on your students, know your students. I think that's the best way.
And I would say again, from our perspective, again, I mentioned earlier a series that we have at the firm called Beyond College, the Beyond College webinar series. You can look that up. You can share that information with anybody that you'd like. But we have students that join those programs as early as middle school. And then we certainly have high schoolers and college students that join. And then we jokingly say, and I see my buddy Tamika back there, we said there's people that's 58 on them webinars too. So I think there's a lifelong learning that happens there. But I really want to revisit something you mentioned. I think real, no real, ball, no ball. So the realer you keep it with students in a respectful kind of a way, the more that they're going to say, wow, okay, Mr. Norwood gets that, or, Tamika gets that, or John gets that. So I think we can find ways to be really, really authentic and be respectful and give the students the resources that they need to kind of grow and develop. But then we also have to help them along that growth path and be there to kind of hold hands if need be, or have someone else that can kind of mentor and support them along the way. So, but again, that starts at the elementary level. That could be happening in the high school level, and certainly goes with you when you get through college successfully, and as you move to your career as well. So.
Okay, so I'm gonna cut us off, even though I know we could talk longer, but hopefully you got just a taste today of Black leadership, the spectrum, and we just touched on bits and pieces. So that last question, there's at least 5 other people that could give you a lot of perspectives on that. So definitely come connect with us. Please join me in thanking our panelists again. Thank you. And you can return to your seats. And to close us out, we are going to bring up the originator of this event, Dr. Antonio Boyd. Dr. Antonio Boyd is a faculty member in our EDD program. He's an alumni of the EDD program. He is a business owner, community leader. I mean, I could go on and on, but I'm just going to hand over the mic.
I just want to thank our panelists again. So many awesome leaders, and then they showed up tonight, right? So let's give them a hand. And our moderator, I was going to get to Dean. I just want to start with our CEO. I told her earlier today that universities need to be in the center of communities. And in my work over 30 years, if a university walks us alongside a community, that's when it can be powerful. And I just want to say, Dean, you have positioned Northeastern in Charlotte to walk alongside this community. I want to thank you for that. Give a hand. I also want to thank my colleague, my former professor, my mentor, my dean, the lady who, when I first came into the doors of Northeastern and said I wanted to study experiential learning, she told me to go for it. And now I'm a doctor. Dean Corliss, give her a hand. What you see in her is the Oprah side of her, but what you don't know about her is she's one of the top STEM researchers in the space of students of color in our country. She's really. I had a student who was in our Seattle campus run me down and say, "Hey, I met this lady at the Seattle convening, and she's brilliant. I read her article, Dr. Boyd. Her name is Corliss. Do you know her?" And I told her, I was like, "That's the dean." And so I asked Corliss, I said, every student in my classes, I want them to have exemplars. And I asked Corliss, would you meet with her? And her assistant just called me yesterday saying they're going to get together. So that's the kind of relationship that our professors have with the students. So could we give her another hand? And then, of course, our leader for all of our initiatives surrounding our students of color. And as you can see, brother is a brother, right? I saw him dancing in Boston on the yard, just hanging out with the students. but he's the director of the Institute. So can we give this brother a hand? And then I do have to say special recognition to our brother from Wells Fargo. When I was a student, we were studying how our students of color learn better through experience. And so one of my professors challenged me to get a panel of corporate leaders to talk about that with students. And the first person to volunteer to do that, think about this, was Dewey Norwood. Now, several years forward, I called Dewey to come here. And he's coming again. This brother is working so hard in the vineyard for our kids. We got to give this brother a hand. Can we give him a hand? All right, and then of course, all of our aspiring nurses, we had 2 students come up today saying that they're in our nursing program. They're so proud, ma'am. And I'm sure they're just foaming over the fact that they see you today. And so can you stand up, our future nurses? Come on, stand up. And then I'm going down the road. I'm a close scoreless, but my cousin-in-law came to check out Northeastern because his daughter got her master's in speech pathology and is looking to go further. So he's just so happy that he saw you, he heard you, he has an exemplar. He's going to take all your volunteer opportunities. His daughter will be in your space. And then we've heard so much about the next brother and just all that he's done for our kids, putting them in spaces where they can grow. Brother Singh is an amazing, he's been around. We're trying to get him in the program. He won't do it, but we give him financial aid. We're doing everything we can. Ricky, come on, Ricky, come on. And then our last sister, I really do think that the ancestors are proud today. When they look down on what we have done, I think they're proud today. But I think that this sister right here, who's got a PhD at EDD, is Booker T's vision and Du Bois' dream. When you think about the fact that only 2.5% of African-American males get a doctoral degree and only 5% females. And when I look at Jada and I understand one of my students who's in my class who better get that paper in tomorrow or we gonna have a problem, then I'm moved almost to tears to understand what we're doing. Lastly, I want to close with, there's a young man who decided on Northeastern campus, because there's only 2.5% of African-American males who get a doctoral degree. There's only, for every 7 females on the PWI, there's only 1 Black man. For every 5 females at HBCU, there's only 1 Black man. That he was going to start a Black male affinity group of doctoral students. He invited me to meet with the group, 8 young men. I was moved to tears. These men are researchers, scholar practitioners, powerful. But none of the gentlemen on that call knew what they wanted to do with their degree once they graduated. So I knew that they needed mentorship. And so what he's done is started a mentoring program where when you come in our program and you're a brother, we're gonna get you through no matter what it takes. And so I wanna honor Eugene. He's also Booker T's vision and Du Bois' dream. He's not here today because he's studying and researching how more African-American students can study abroad. So he's at the Omega Psi, and he's actually asking the Panhellenic Council to support that. So he's actually at the Omega Convention researching his fraternity brothers and pushing them to become mentors of our Black and brown boys. So I want to honor Eugene. I want to invite all the young men here to be a part of that. And I just want to thank you for coming. God bless.
That concludes our program. So we want to just welcome everybody to continue to hang out with us, network, enjoy. There's food outside. Please help yourselves and don't be strangers. Come back to Northeastern and visit us again. We love to connect with the community. As Eugene said, we want to be a part. We are a part of Charlotte. So don't be strangers. Thank you.